Right, I've loaded my JPEG UV snapshot into Photoshop. So I have a look at then editing this and doing some painting with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at zooming in on this. So the Z key, and we just click, we can zoom in on it. Holding the Alt key down will allow you to zoom out. I'm then going to change this so I can actually use it as a transparency. So I go to Image, Adjustments, and Invert here, and that will turn the black into white and vice versa. And what I'm going to do, I want to make that white transparent. You can delete things and so on. You can actually export stuff as different file formats, but I've always done it this way, and I just prefer this way. So I'm going to make a background copy so I can actually edit this. So I drag this down onto a new layer, and that creates a copy of the background. I'm going to hide the background away by turning off the little eye icon. And then I'm going to change this background copy, make sure it's selected, and I'm going to change it to a multiply, and that will make the white transparent. So now what I can do, I can leave that background alone but work underneath it. So if I click on the old background, create a new layer, so it's a new blank layer. Anything I do on this layer now, if I bring a brush tool, you can see the wireframe still appears through it. So it's quite good, and I can turn that on and off if I want to. Okay, so I'll just undo that, and we'll use the G key, which is the paint bucket, which is this icon over here. And if you hold down over this, you'll see the other tools underneath it. Okay, so there's the gradient tools in there as well. So we've got a sort of a kind of mid-tone, skin tone kind of thing there. I'll put that down. Then what we're going to just draw a face on our character, and these are just going to be incredibly simple textures just to check that everything is in the right place. I'm going to do every new bit of drawing on a fresh texture. On a fresh layer, sorry, so I can always edit these things later on. So I use a black color, I use the bracket keys to adjust my brush size, and we'll make some eyes for our character here, and a nose, and then a mouth like this. So very simple kind of textures, keeping it really simple for now. This will be an ear here, and we'll do some hair on him. Like this, and like this, and then it's obviously going to come around his ear here, so like this, like so, and then we quickly do this, fill this in a wee bit here, and the same on here, and like so, and here. Like I said, I'm doing this very quickly just to get an idea of what it's doing. We're giving some quick skin colors. So on another layer, I'll get a red here. I'll just make it a bit bigger. I can change the opacity. This is always quite nice. Like so, it's just not as strong. What I'm doing, I'll show you. I'm going to make him look really tired. So I do that, but then I want to change the order of that. I want that to be behind the black, so I just drop that down. You can make this really over the top, and then you can just knock the opacity back on the layer, so you can make it much more subtle if you want to, like that. And we'll do the same. We'll create another layer for some stubble. I'll use the poly lasso tool, which is this one here. Again, look, to get that, it's underneath the lasso tool, and I'll create some stubble for him as I'm creating a sort of scruffy cowboy kind of character. I just fill that with a sort of quite a bold color to start with, so the G key again, fill that with that, make sure it's in the right place, that looks okay, and then just Control D to deselect it, but whilst I'm on that layer, I'm going to knock the opacity right down so it's much more subtle than that, so it's just sort of a shadow kind of thing, and then we'll put some blur on it, in filters, blur, Gaussian blur, this one here, if I've pronounced that right. That will just soften the edges of it a bit, so it's not so sort of hard edged, like so. So we've got a basic face laid down quite quickly. Next thing what we do, I'll just use the eraser tool here just to make his eyes white again, like that. And I'm just making sure I'm on the right layer. You know, you can use the eye icons to help you understand which layer you're editing. Okay, and you can double click on them and name them if you want to. Next thing we'll look at just colouring in his coat. So I'm going to go down to layer 1 and create a new layer above that. I'm going to use that polylasso tool again and just mask it off so I can fill this with a color. So it's nice to have a bit of a gap just between these things, so you can work around them. You don't want to work right to the lines. I just need this across, probably about there for his hand, around the bottom of his coat, not too close to the lines, because sometimes you see the edges sort of coming through. And when you get to the end, just press enter when you're near, and it will close the thing. Press G again. Let's choose this sort of grey brown color here. Fill that. Control D to deselect it, and we'll what should we do? We could put some buttons on it. We'll make a neckerchief for him, like a neckerchief thing around his collar. So I'll get a brush tool. I'll choose a color. I'll choose a big bright color, and we can always change it later. So something like that. These will just be placeholder kind of textures that we can change later on if we want to. But it's just to check everything's in the right place. And it might be that we need to kind of edit things. I'm wondering why that. Oh yeah, I knocked the opacity right down, so it kind of gets a nice effect, like so. So he's got a neckerchief around here, and if you're working on layers like this, which I haven't just done, I've put this on the same layers before. That's not good practice. I should have created a new layer to do that on. What I can do, look, if I've got history up here, I can go back to there. That's like an undo. I'll create that new layer now. I'll put my opacity right up, and I will create his neckerchief like that. It's much brighter now because I've turned that opacity off. I'll change this this color in a sec, and then we'll have that sort of going around the back like this. We hope that sort of marries up with the UVs, but we can always adjust that later on. And if you don't like the color, you can then go to Image, Adjustments, and Hue and Saturation. We can knock the saturation down on it. We can change the hue of it, so we can kind of change the color of things and the lightness and stuff like that. So you can change all these colors, and that's why it's best to keep them on separate layers. We can make loads of other changes. We could put textures on it. We could put noise on it. So like layer 5, we could make a duplicate of it. This is always the best way to do. Make a duplicate of it. And then we could go filter, noise, add noise, and we make it Gaussian, monochromatic, so it's got no colouring. You can make it really bold if you want to. I'll show you why. Like something like that. And then all you do, because you've got a copy of it, you can adjust it now with just the opacity. It allows you to sort of knock that right back and just make it just a really subtle kind of noise kind of texture on it if you want to. And you can put gradients on it. You can start to paint over things and all sorts. You know, I mean, this is, like I said, just a really simple kind of beginning. Right, we'll save this. What I want to do though, before I save it, I want to turn off the wireframe because that will appear on our character. So we'll turn off that. We'll save it as a PSD to start off with because that will keep all our layers. So this will be like a working file that we can go back to. We don't want to lose all our layers. So we'll go Save As. And we'll save that as Out UV Puppet PSD2. I don't know. I've got an old one up there. So I'll save that one. Okay. And then what we'll do, we'll then save it as a JPEG. So we go Save As. And I'll save that in the Source Images folder because that's where Maya by default looks for things. But we'll save that as a JPEG. So go to that drop down and I'll save that as that. Okay, and we'll keep those options as they are, and then we'll go back to Maya, and now what we want to do is load that texture onto the character's material. So we go to Maya Classic, and what we'll notice is there's loads and loads of little tabs now in the attribute editor. If you bring up your attribute editor, this is all the history from when we're doing the texturing. If I bring up my channel box, look at all this history. So there's UV projections and UV cut and paste and stuff like that. So if we do Alt, Shift and D whilst we're in object mode, it will get rid of all that history. And when we go back to the attribute editor, it will be back to just the 3 nodes we're familiar with. So we go to Lambert 2 and we want to click on this grid. We then want to click on File. And then when we get to File 1 node, we click on the folder and we go and find, look, it looks in the source images, and we load this up. and then we can see our character then. And it's not too bad. I mean, it's just a starting point, but it gives us our textures on the character, and they're mapping okay. The things to look for are like around the shoulders, where obviously the UV shells were very different. So you can see here it's not marrying up. It's not too bad here with my guesswork. Around the ears are okay. But like here, we really did want to tidy this up. You could go back into Photoshop and adjust it. Look, the noise on the jumper's too much. It's a bit too busy. But if you wanted to adjust this, you could go back to your UV texture editor. You don't have to go into it here. We could just bring it up here as a separate pop-up window, like so. And we can just tweak it. So if I have a look at this shoulder here, it's just finding the right bit. So is it this UV here? Yes, it is. You can see it's highlighted here. So if I move it backwards and forwards, look, we can just kind of get it to marry up a bit better there. You can just adjust these a little bit to get it to kind of fit together a little bit better. And that's how you can kind of tweak it. And then once you're kind of happy with that, you can just keep going backwards and forwards between Maya and Photoshop until you've got your textures how you want them to be. But you know, that's shown you how to just get basic 2D images onto a 3D object.